well, welcome to the Royal Exchange at Matchday live on Tuesday the 14th of July as we build up to our battle with Boro. Richard Dorman at Matchday Stadium alongside Dan Wimbush, who's in the comfort of his own home. Dan, how are you doing?
Richard, pleasure to be with you again. Yeah, I'm doing well, thank you. Looking forward to another day, another game, and hopefully 3 points.
Absolutely. Just briefly, we've got a couple of minutes before we're going to be able to reveal the team news. First off, Dan, did you manage to watch the local rivalry derby, if you like, last night, Wycombe against Oxford, and see who we were going to be playing in the Championship next season?
Yeah, I caught bits and pieces. I caught about 25 minutes of the second half and obviously saw the goals later. And Mr. Akinfenwa's delightful celebrations and call from Jurgen Klopp, which can't help but bring a smile to your face. Yeah, I mean, whoever won that game, I think we as Reading fans were going to win because it meant a localish game to go to. And, well, fingers crossed that we'll actually be able to go to these away games by the time they are scheduled. But really happy for Wycombe. I've always had a bit of a soft spot for them. One that waned a little bit in the late 90s, early 2000s when Laurie Sanchez and they were giving us a couple of beatings back in the day. But ever since then, they've been back down there in the sort of the lower two divisions. And, you know, it's great to see them get a chance at the Championship for the first time. No love lost for Oxford. Would have been nice to play them again, but it's a shame. I mean, they have got quite a few former Reading players as well, so it's a shame for the likes of Rob Dickie that they didn't get up. But look, someone was always going to lose, and we as Reading fans know too well the pain of losing at Wembley. So commiserations to Oxford, but yeah, congratulations to Wycombe.
Yeah, just over a minute until the team news, as you mentioned there. We've got that to look forward in the division, and we know without a shadow of a doubt we're guaranteed Championship status next season. You know, it's been we'll talk about it a little bit later on about how tight the table is, but 3 games to go and we're still 100% in the division next season. So that's a bit of a novelty compared to the last couple of years, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we thought sort of a few weeks ago, sort of coming out of the sort of coronavirus break, that we were pretty much going to be safe. And then a couple of results didn't go our way, and then you just had that little nervous, started looking over your shoulder and analysing our remaining games. So it's good just to get that out of the way with 3 games to spare and just really sort of plan towards next season now. And you've got that bit of certainty going forward, which is always very important from a managerial and from the club's point of view.
Absolutely, and we're going to talk about all those bits and pieces over the course of the next 45 minutes or so, not before we check out the team news in 15 seconds time. Dan, what would you like to see in the starting lineup today?
Well, obviously, there's a couple of injury doubts with Pele going off at half-time and Ovie Ejario missing. So if either of those would fit, it'd be great. But if not, you just want to see as much consistency as possible.
Well, let's take a look. It's exactly 5 o'clock. Let's have a look at the team news for today. Well, you mentioned it, Dan, injury doubt for Pele. It rules him out, presumably, of the squad completely. That means one change to the starting 11 where Liam Moore comes back in. It might be a back 5. Perhaps he'll play in front of the back 4 like he did when he came off the bench against Charlton, but just the team in full. We've got Raphael in goal, Michael Morrison, Liam Moore, Gabriel Osho, Tom McIntyre, Tyler Blackett as a defensive 5, if you like. Then John Swift, Michael Olise, Andy Rinomhota as a midfield 3, and kind of providing the attacking options, Yaku Mata and George Puskás. Again, I'm sure we'll find out during the course of the match how they line up exactly. On the bench, Sam Walker, Chris Gunter, Matt Miazga, Sam Baldock, Jordan Abita, Gareth McCleary, Lucas Boye, Ayab Masika and Omar Richards. Kind of to a greater or lesser extent what you were expecting, Dan?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I talked about it on the show a couple of weeks ago that what you really want to see at this stage of the season is consistency. You want to see the same names week in, week out getting into that rhythm. And look, we've kept clean sheets for the last 3 games, so it's great to see that defence intact. It's a shame for Pele, who's had a sort of real stop-start season here. Every time he just sort of gets into that little bit of run of form, there's a niggle or there's a tactical shift or something, and he seems to miss out. So disappointing for him, but a real chance for Liam Moore to sort of remind everybody why he's so highly rated, remind everybody why he's got the armband as well. He's got a chance to impress. Maybe it'll be in a slightly new position. We're not entirely sure. It looks like it might be in a sort of screening, sort of CDM role, but again, who knows what Mark Bowen will do. Maybe he'll sort of change things up again. And yeah, it's a shame Ovie Ejario is still missing. I mean, he's one of those X-factor players as well that can really sort of get you off the edge of your seat, or sofa in this case. But yeah, hopefully he'll be sort of fit and raring to go for next season, and hopefully still in a Reading shirt anyway. Yeah,
well, you mentioned Pele. Yeah, if stop-start is a good way to describe it. He got his first Reading goal, and then coronavirus happened. So days later. So that's kind of his season in a nutshell. In that sense, hasn't really he's been, when he's been in the team, he's been excellent. But yeah, you'd like to have seen him a little bit more often, perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, he didn't have the easiest of starts here. He took a while to sort of get going, and then he sort of really sort of established himself. And as we said, a stop-start is the right word. I mean, when the game restarted after the break, he wasn't in the side. Mark opting for that sort of trio of Elise, Swift, and Ajaria. So he sort of found himself out of the side, and he's just come back in. He's given Reading that little bit of steel that maybe we missed in games against sort of Derby and Brentford. He's come in and impressed, but look, unfortunately, he's one of these players that is on loan from Monaco. Could this be, we might have seen the last of him in a Reading shirt, and if so, it's disappointing. But again, unfortunately, this won't do his chances of earning either a permanent move here or a move elsewhere any good. So he'll be determined to try and get a few minutes before the end of the campaign and go out on a high, because it'll be a shame if that is the last we've seen of him in unfortunate circumstances.
Yeah, and you mentioned, of course, that Liam Moore coming into the team, maybe he'll do similar to what he did at the Valley against Charlton. And yet, did he catch the game against Charlton? We'll recap that in a moment. But yeah, did you manage to catch much of that game?
Yeah, I mean, look, I've got a 2-year-old, so unlike most weeks where I get to sort of escape, I was parenting and sort of keeping an eye on my phone, so caught bits and pieces and watched the extended highlights later. I mean, look, the second half, we did kind of lose control of the game. On another day, a couple of referee decisions might have gone Charlton's way and we come away with a defeat for that game. But you look at the mental toughness of the side and you say, well, it's encouraging because they have held on. They've not sort of capitulated. You know, we conceded that late goal against Stoke. We conceded those 2 late goals in the first half against Derby. So you've got to say, whether there's a bit of luck involved, fine, you ride it. The important thing was we didn't let those moments get to us and we kept our composure. And yes, we did lose our way a little bit after half time, but as I said, we got the job done, and that's important because you need to get into that winning habit. You need to remember how to win games, how to close out games. It's such an important skill. You look at Jaap Stam's team that got to the playoff final. They were almost the masters of finding a way to win. Very rarely did we sort of completely dominate an opposition, but we would have those key moments. Ali Al-Habsi would make a great save. Jan Kermgren would score a key goal. Danny Williams would put in a great block. And we just kept finding ways to win. And that's what this team has to do next season. They haven't done it enough this year, but there are those little shoots of positivity coming through in these last few games.
Well, Reading found a way to win at the Valley last weekend. 1-0 ended against Charlton thanks to a Puskás penalty. Let's take a look at the highlights. Just a reminder that you'll be having to watch the game on iFollow this evening, not here on YouTube or Periscope if you're watching on either of those two things. If you're a season ticket holder, you can watch online for free. If you're any other kind of supporter, if you don't have a season ticket, you can get a match pass for £10. You're against the clock now, though, to kick off less than an hour away. And if you need any help, email ifollow@efl.com for support. Dan, we saw the highlights of last weekend's game against Charlton there. The highlights don't do us many favours. I think our one chance that we saw there was the penalty in the 3rd minute. So that's what highlights packages do sometimes, so that they pick out the chances, and they don't necessarily show the other 88 minutes of some very good defensive play from Reading and the kind of quality that entails as well sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I say, it's about finding a way to win. Look, whether you win a game by having 15 shots and scoring 1 and winning 1-0, or having 2 shots, scoring 1 and winning 1-0, doesn't matter. You still get the 3 points. So look, it was a good, solid defensive performance. And 3 clean sheets in a row really be encouraging to Mark Bowen, especially, we touched on it, the young defenders that have come into the side. Well, that gives them massive amounts of confidence, because it says to them, look, I can do this at championship level. I've kept out 3 teams, 2 of which are absolutely desperate for points. All 3 of them, in fact, desperate for points at the bottom of the table. So to be able to do that, keep the clean sheets, is fantastic. And it's great for the likes of our show and Tom McIntyre to be able to be in that side. And they can say, look, I've legitimately, I'm not being in here just because, these are throwaway games where, the manager can experiment. I've earned my place here. I've performed. I've done the job. And I'm here to stay, try and get me out of the side.
Absolutely, and irrespective of, they're certainly stamping their claim on those positions, those young players, and there's so much value as well for them, because, and again, I don't want to, if I use the example that Chris Gunter, for example, at right back has got, almost probably around 500 career games under his belt, but actually Gabriel Osho now, he's just got his 4th consecutive game for the first time in his career, by being named on the team sheet tonight. So the value is so much higher to someone like Gabe, but he's not in there just because of that. He's also in there because of the fact that he's performed so well in the last 3 games.
Exactly. They very much earned their spot, and the important thing is that it shows to the dressing room. Again, I mentioned this last week, that look, if you perform well, you're going to be in the team. It doesn't matter if there are more established people. You're keeping the club captain out the side, and that's a massive boost to the young players and to the players coming through from the academy, and to other players in the squad as well that maybe haven't been featuring as much, to say, look, if I get my chance and take it, this manager's going to back me. So it says a lot, and it also gives that proverbial kick at the backside to those players that are out of the side, to your Liam Moores, to your Matt Miazga, saying, look, you've got to work really hard to get back in this team. I'm not just going to throw you back in here. These young lads have done well. We're winning games, we're getting points, we're getting clean sheets. So you've really got to impress me and be ready to take your chance. And that's what Liam Moore has tonight, maybe in a slightly different role. So it's a massive opportunity for him. And as I said, it's just fantastic to see more success through from the academy.
Well, yeah, certainly another feather in the cap for our academy system. And of course, Michael Morrison kind of playing between Tom McIntyre in centre half and Gabe Osho outside him at the right back position. He had plenty of good words to say about Tom McIntyre after the game as his centre-half partner, and also Mark Bowen had some nice words about Andy Rinomhota as well and what he was doing in midfield. Let's have a little look and see what they had to say.
Well, that's what Andy Rinomhota's got. He's a manager's dream as a midfield player, because he, defensively he'll do his duties there. He's box to box. He's full of energy. He'll try and get on the back of his mark and run into the box as well. And it's just that will for him to do it. A lot of players in this game want to try and come and have the ball to feet all the time. And that's not hard work. The hard yards are running off the ball, running away from the ball, and trying to affect the opposition, and that's what Andy does well.
Yeah, he's a really good listener. He really wants to improve his game and takes everything on board and studies what he's doing and is always asking questions and wants to do well. And that's half the battle. He's ready to put his head in there and block. And he's not one of them centre halves where we could lose 3-0, but he's done a nice pass. He wants to defend and do the horrible side, which sometimes you don't quite have when you come through the academies. And I think he's got a real promising future. Really gives balancing on the left hand side as well with his left foot, and I think as he feels more comfortable, you'll see that in his game as well. And he's really done himself a huge favour with his performances.
Well, those players have certainly earned their shirts, and if you want to win a signed shirt, you can tweet using the hashtag REAVMID, Reading vs Middlesbrough, REAVMID. And yet, like in previous weeks, the people have entered the competition using their pictures for our games against Huddersfield and Brentford, and we've had some amazing shows of people around the country, around the world, in fact, using their living rooms, their bedrooms, kitted out in Royals gear, and in some cases the terrace outside the house as well, if they've been banished and have to watch out on the outside. But you've got another chance to win a signed shirt from Reading Football Club using that hashtag. And I'm sure, Dan, you'll be entering using your living room as well, or whichever.
I mean, I'm doing my part.
You certainly are. Certainly are. Just those young players. I know we've mentioned them at not length yet, but we can't. You can't mention it enough, can you? Really? I mean, it's such a big thing about Reading Football Club, and the fact that Andy Rinomhota, as the manager mentioned there, he's come back in. He looks really fresh actually since the restart, hasn't he? And he's using his physicality well. He's getting box to box, and he won the penalty as well, which was what the game hinged on.
Yeah, I mean, Andy's, again, you talked about Pele having an up and down season, and Andy's the same. I mean, from winning player of the season last year and being one of the real standouts. Again, he sort of struggled a bit as Jose Gomez and Mark Bowen both tried to find the sort of right midfield chemistry, and especially with the emergence of the likes of Michael Elise as well, it's got even more competition. So for him to come back in and start to put in those composed performances, it's not easy, because when you're a very young player and you first come into the side, you've got that benefit of maybe people don't know that much about you. But by the time you're in your second season, teams are playing against you for the third, fourth time, and you've got to adapt. It's that, what do they call it? The sophomore slump that can happen, the second season syndrome. So we've seen lots of young players in the past come through, and then they just sort of struggle when they start. And Liam Kelly's a great example of that, who really burst onto the scene, but just sort of lost his way a bit. Towards the later stage of his Reading career. So it's great to see Andy stick to it, and the mental toughness to come through and take the sort of benchings and missing out on the team and yet come back into the side and perform. Says great things about his character, and again bodes really well for him for the future. Yeah,
and again there's Tom McIntyre too. I know we seem to talk about every time he's picked in the squad, because I think he's a real throwback, isn't he? He absolutely loves defending. I don't know when was the first time you saw Tom McIntyre play football?
I think I've seen him for some under 23 games, and he sort of stood out as being someone that is solid, and the fact he's got this Reading background, and you always you will those players to succeed. You want the local lads and those that would actually go out there and die for the shirt. You want them playing for your team. You want them to sort of kick on and be given those opportunities, and he's taken it so far. He's had Reading have had other young centre backs sort of popping through over the years, like Sandro Burley. But Tom seems to just have that little bit extra that sort of let him stay in the side. And look, being partnered, playing alongside someone like Michael Morrison can only do sort of great things for him. You look at Alex Pearce, when Alex Pearce was coming through the ranks, and he had the likes of Eva Ingemarson to play alongside. Those sort of characters, Casper Gorks as well, can really help you as a young defender. Mick Gooding and A.D. Williams have sort of said on Beef Straight Bucks in the past that as a centre-back, it's such a specialised position that you can't really judge someone until they've sort of played the best part of 50, 100 games. So the challenge again for Tom is, like I mentioned with Andy Rinomhota, is once players sort of pick up on, okay, he's not so good at X or Y, I'll try and exploit that. Can Tom then adapt his game to sort of match those? So what I'd really like to think is that the Reading fans don't put too much pressure on these young guys early on. Look, they've had fantastic starts, but they are very young. They're inexperienced in terms of championship action. So look, they're going to have the odd wobble. That's almost inevitable. The important thing is that we stick behind them as fans especially when we're allowed back in the stadium. And also, again, just don't raise expectations so high that, if they dip down to a 5 or 6 out of 10, we don't think, okay, well, that's it. They're rubbish, get them out the side and bring someone straight back in. No, give them time, let them learn. And sometimes, the only way you can learn is through making those mistakes.
Must admit, Tom is one of these players. I think I saw him play in the trophy back in maybe the 2016-17 season, when we were involved in that. And yeah, he was. I think I remember speaking to the likes of Jaap Stam, who had a very keen eye on him. Could tell that. I think he was a 17-year-old back then. That he'd basically missed almost the entirety of his scholarship. Tom McIntyre had really 2 bad injuries. I think one, maybe a broken leg and a back problem as well before that. So he basically missed his scholarship, but then popped up and was outstanding for the under-23s and under-21s in the trophy. So yeah, he's actually kind of been blooded in fairly over quite a long period of time in some senses, but which has been quite good for him, I think.
Yeah, it's always good to just being sort of involved and around the first team. And like I mentioned earlier, when you then come into the team and the team wins and keep clean sheets, you just sort of, you can walk in, that little bit extra, you feel that 5 foot taller almost, you've got that, you can puff your chest out because you feel like you belong. You're not just there for for the experience, or again, for the manager experimenting, you're doing your job. So, he's got that experience behind him. We've got another 3 games this season. He gets to go away for however long the break is going to be. And he'll come into sort of the pre-season full of confidence and sort of knowing that he's fully in the mix for those shirts, for one of those 2 centre-back slots next season.
And, well, you mentioned those next 3 games, starting tonight against Middlesbrough. Bizarrely, we don't know. Well, we could finish anywhere between 6th and 20th. Let's have a little look at this slide from Ben Mayhew, also known as Experimental 361 on Twitter. It kind of shows what the likelihood of where teams are going to finish. Leeds, West Brom almost certainly going up automatically. Brentford, Fulham and Nottingham Forest almost shoe-ins for the playoffs. And then it's absolutely staggering, really, isn't it, Dan? When you look at the rest of the table with 3 games to go, the breadth. Okay, you would fancy the table to look more or less as it does now, give or take a little bit of movement. But the fact that it's just so tight. I mean, have you ever known a table looking so congested at this stage of the season where it feels like, well, yeah, maybe there is movement yet to be had?
Well, you look at the rollercoaster emotions we've been through as fans since the restart. When we are 1-0 up against Stoke, you really are looking up. You're thinking, oh God, we could finish today 5-6 points outside the playoffs. We might make a late charge. 2 games later, you're sat there going, oh, how many points are we clear of the bottom 3? We really need to start getting some results here. So, and there's been so many teams like that. You look at Derby, who have been right down the bottom, they've been right at the top. Now they've lost 2 or 3 games in a row, and suddenly they're smack bang in the middle of the table. So it is great, and that's what you love as a Championship fan. You love that ability that if you put that run together, you can be in contention almost to the last game of the season. I mean, it's not going to happen, but mathematically, we're still in with the most remotest of chance of finishing the top 6 with 3 games to go. So, look, it's great that you have those opportunities in this division that maybe, we know from painful experience, you don't really get in the Premier League. It can be a really sort of painful time because you can go sort of weeks without wins, and you can know that it's going to take quite a big momentum shift to get us anywhere near out of our little mini zone. Whereas the Championship this season, all throughout the campaign, you've sort of been able to look at both ends of the table and sort of be looking at all those fixtures and the teams around them and thinking, well, how can we catch them, or how do we stay away from them?
Quite remarkable as well is that the actual, it's nice not to be down there at the very bottom scrapping, because it looks like there's every chance that, well, with Barnsley on 43 points, Luton on 44, we could have a record points total for the team that finishes bottom. I think the highest it was back in 1996. Luton got relegated in 24th place on 45 points. That's almost a point a game. And yet Barnsley on 43 at the moment, it could be the bottom team going out with, upwards of 45, 46 points, which is, it's been weaker teams, but there's been no whipping boys this year, have there?
No, absolutely. I mean, I remember watching our game at Barnsley. I think we drew 1-1, didn't we?
Yeah.
And I looked at Barnsley that day, and they played some fantastic football. And they've been on little mini runs throughout this season where you really think they were going to pull away from it, and they can't do so. I mean, Wigan's possible points deduction is going to throw another spanner in the works as well for those teams at the bottom. But Hull, again, a team struggling on and off the pitch, lots of upheaval going on around there. But they've beaten us this season. They beat us in the first couple of weeks of the season, I think second game of the campaign. And Luton, Luton are probably the one team where you would say, okay, they have been weaker when we faced them, but then they've gone and got a point against Leeds the other week. So, again, you can't take any, it's so cliche by this point, but you can't take any team for granted in the Championship, because you look up and down it, and Reading have, competed with some of the best and yet been, well beaten. We got thrashed at home by Wigan 3-0. And they could end the season relegated, albeit through extenuating circumstances. But Middlesbrough as well have beaten us this season, and hopefully they're not going to beat us again today. But again, for teams below us, a lot of them have taken points and beaten us this season. So it does go to show that there is a lot of strength in this division.
all the cliches. No easy games. Everyone can beat everyone. It's all true though, as you can imagine. And we know that the first 11 games for Reading didn't start too well. That kind of caused a change at the top. Jose Gomez was stepped aside, and Mark Bowen was appointed 9 months ago today. And whether you're aware or not, let's take a little look at the table since Mark Bowen was appointed. Reading, on those 32 games since his appointment, would be 5th overall. That's sitting on 48 points. That's a total of 13 wins and 9 draws. That leaves us only behind Brentford, Leeds, West Brom, and Fulham. Those teams, those kind of heavyweights, if you like, in the division. Or they certainly played that way this season. Reading, alongside Millwall and Cardiff on 48 points out of those 32 games. I mean, the fact that Reading are up there, Dan, under Mark Bowen's stewardship, is probably one of those things that's been maybe slipped under the radar, even with our own fans to an extent.
Yeah, I think the biggest issue for Mark Bowen is that those points haven't come at a sort of a consistent pace. We've just been in little bursts. I think we won 3 of his first 4 games in charge. Then we went through a spell of winning 1 in 6. Then we won 5 in 7. Then we went through a run of no wins in 8. Then again, 3 wins in 6, then no wins in 3, and now we've won 2 out of our last 3. So the momentum just we get up, we push up through the gears, and then we come to a sudden stop. And some of that hasn't been Mark's fault. We've had injuries at key times to people like Lucas Shaw. We were in that great little run over Christmas and New Year, and then he got injured, and that really sort of again threw that spanner in the works. But that's why maybe I think that Reading fans and Championship fans in general haven't been able to sort of get too excited this season, because every time you do get your hopes up, we just the wheels don't fall off, but we have a wobble, we have a puncture. So maybe instead what you maybe like to see is 2 wins, a draw, then a defeat, rather than going on these little runs where we don't win in 5, or we lose 3 games out of 4. Just the ability to grind out those extra points and just keep the momentum going and stop that sort of negativity creeping in, I think will be crucial next season, because this division is so much about momentum. You look at great Reading teams in the past, you think of Brian McDermott's first spell in charge, that sort of first half of season he came in. We almost finished in the playoffs. We got on such a great roll, and the second half of his second season and his third, and that culminating in that championship win, were all about momentum, yet alone the unstoppable juggernaut that we had in 2006. So that will be Mark Bowen's challenge. It'll be trying to get his side away from these little blips, these little barren runs, because if you want to finish in the top 6 over a full season, you can't afford to have too many of them. You need to pick up 75 points, which is the best part of 2 points, an average of 2 points a game. Well, not quite 2 points a game, but 1.5 points. So that's his challenge. How he can do that, I don't know. Again, luck plays a massive part, and it's getting the right personnel to be able to sort of, no team is going to find it easy when they lose a £5 million player like Lucas Shaw. The trick is to try and have someone and have different systems that can cope. And maybe we haven't quite had that this year. Maybe that's something that Mark's going to have to go away over the summer and think about. But as you say, the points don't lie. We were really fearing for the worst when Jose Gomez left the football club, and to be sat here with 3 games to go, completely mathematically safe, is a great achievement in itself.
And using a phrase that you used earlier, Dan, about when one door closes, another one opens. The likes of having Ovie Ejaria not available, well, it actually kind of elevates other players, and it gives them the responsibility to kind of like unlock the door, and maybe they need that responsibility on their shoulders, to be looked at. People like John Swift, who wore the armband, in the absence of Ovie and stuff. Sometimes in adversity, you can go, if you can find ways to win without the kind of difference-making players, that has its own benefits too.
Yeah, and look, when we were coming out of the break, who would have said, we'd be on our best run post-restart with a defence that included Osho and Tom McIntyre? Not many people would have said that. Everyone would have been looking at the likes of Moore, Morrison and Miazga. But, Miazga's sending off has opened that door for some of the younger players, and they've taken the ball and run with it. You look in years past, you look at Jordan Abita coming in. Jordan Abita was never a left back, but he had to come in through a massive injury crisis, and he made that spot his own. Andy Rinomota as well. He came in during a period of uncertainty and lots of injuries going on in the squad. So yeah, every time you get that opportunity, it's up to your players. And as a manager, you'd love to see that. You love to see your younger players and your fringe players grasping those opportunities. I don't think any manager is ever upset when they've got selection headaches. They might joke that, it's tough for me to leave people out, but secretly deep down, they must love it, knowing that they've got these players coming through, and yet they've got quality and hopefully hungry players ready to replace them if anything goes wrong.
Well, after the game against Charlton, Mark Bowen in particular was keen to stress the value of getting wins at home. As you mentioned, not one here yet since the restart, and only once. You were telling me earlier that only once since the turn of the year. So, yeah, Mark Bowen talking about Middlesbrough, and of course his opposition manager today, Neil Warnock, as was Michael Morrison as well, and a task that we're likely to face today.
The Middlesbrough one, because I just said we want to try and push into the top half and into the top 10 if we can. But probably more the fact that we've away from home seems at this stage to suit us a little bit better. I only base that on the fact that we seem to get better results away from home, but we've got to try and make sure that we get a home result on the board, which has been too long coming now. So full focus. We'll make sure we recover right from today's game and see how we are fitness wise, and full focus a home game trying to get the 3 points.
Yeah, they're all difficult games towards the end of the season. You look at the table and it almost doesn't count because everybody's fighting for their lives, especially after the break. There was a bit of a lull and everybody's regrouped and got that fighting spirit, and obviously Neil Warnock's gone in there and he knows how to win games and sort his teams out, so it won't be an easy game, and they've got good top talent there with Assombalonga and Fletcher up front, so they're a real threat, and we'll have to be ready like we were today to match that and show our quality.
Listen, a hell of a lot of respect for Neil and what he's done in this division. He's the king of it, isn't he? He seems to get the best of his teams and seems to produce results week in, week out. So he'll look at us, he'll try and find faults in our game and our weaknesses, and he'll try to exploit them. So we've got to make sure we're well prepared.
Yeah, he's got that little magic touch where he can get the right results. He gets the group really battling together and pushing in one direction, and he's a good manager. He's proven to be, and it'll be a tough game, and Middlesbrough have brought him in because of his experience and know that he knows the championship inside out.
Well, manager Mark Bowen described Neil Warnock, his adversary today, as the king of it in the championship. Is that the four-letter word that you would use, Dan?
It's a family-friendly show, isn't it? So
he's a divisive figure, isn't he? Let's put it that way.
No, look, regardless of what you think of him, sort of in his demeanour and the way he behaves and the way he sets his teams up, Mark Bowen is right. He is the king of this division. He's got out of it with QPR. He's got out of it with Sheffield United. He's gotten out of it with Cardiff. And it's not just that. He kept Rotherham in this division a couple of years ago as well. So he knows how to go into a side. Like Michael Morrison said, he just gets them organised, gets them together, and invariably they sort of perform. And Neil's not stupid as well. He wouldn't go into Middlesbrough if he thought this is a group that I can't work with. He would have been looking at them. He would have looked at videos and stuff when he was offered the job and thought, there is quality in this squad. And I'm sure we'll talk about it a bit more later, but you look at that Middlesbrough squad and it does have so much championship quality in it, borderline Premier League quality. A lot of these players were with the club when they were in the Premier League not too long ago, sort of only 2-3 seasons ago now. They were playing Premier League football, so it's a great opportunity, and he's the perfect fit there. I do feel for Jonathan Woodgate, a young coach coming into a club that's in turmoil in one of these real transitional periods. It's a bit like what happened to Brendan Rodgers here. He sort of came in at just the wrong time. He wanted to try and bring through younger players, but you've got big players on big wages at the club at the same time. You're trying to move them on and change the dynamics of the squad. And unfortunately for Jonathan Woodgate, it didn't work out. But, look, they've got a very good manager in Neil Warnock. Will he keep them up? I mean, the odds are on his side, especially if Wigan do get that points deduction. But, you will be looking at Middlesbrough next season and thinking, can they put a run together? Will they do what Cardiff did? And you certainly wouldn't bet against it.
Yeah, I was certainly just being a little bit facetious there about Neil. He's clearly as you mentioned, a really experienced campaigner. It didn't take Middlesbrough long to make a decision. I mean, they gave Jonathan Woodgate the benefit of the doubt after the restart to the tune of one match, and then they made that change, and it was pretty swift, wasn't it? Really, when he came in.
Yeah, I mean, look, Middlesbrough are in a situation again where they've come back down from the Premier League. They've still got, as I mentioned, lots of players who were in that squad and are probably on decent wages. And Steve Gibson is a manager that, is an owner and a chairman that has been so experienced. He's been there for 20 odd years now, and it wouldn't have been easy for him to part company with a club legend like Woodgate, but he's had to save his football club. You know, the realities, especially right now with all the uncertainty around the pandemic of, you know, how clubs are going to survive, they can't afford to lose championship status. And he gave Jonathan Woodgate that game, that Swansea game. They got thrashed 3-0 at home. And I think that just sort of, unfortunately, said that there is something going wrong here. And Neil Warnock is a manager, you know, no nonsense, exactly what it says on the tin. He will, you know, I think he'll keep them up. And again, I think he'll have them in the top half of the table next season. He just knows that he's one of that last sort of generation, you know, he's part of one of the last few members of that generation of managers that still has that sort of aura and can go in and, you know, prima donnas won't survive very long under him. He will just sort them out and, you know, get them out of the squad, get them away from the group, and he'll really galvanise sort of good players that he thinks he's got and the good character he thinks he's got.
Well, yeah, well, no opposition manager has lined up in the away dugout at Matchday Stadium more than Neil Warnock. We'll look at a little diagram in a moment to sort of show that in evidence. But what are your memories of kind of him in the dugout here? He's certainly, the fans certainly don't take him the best, do they?
Yeah, you can't help but think of the game against Sheffield United in the Premier League, you know, all that aggro on the touchline around Keith Gillespie getting sent off. So, I mean, that's the one massive thing that stands out about him. But he's come here in the last couple of years. He seems to come here and nick results. I think he's won a couple of times here, 1-0 with QPR. But overall, we do seem to, you know, have a good record against him. So I remember bringing a Leeds team here over Easter, the season we got promoted, and they kicked us off the park. And that's the thing about Warnock's side sometimes, is they get under your skin as a fan, and I think he relishes that. And he's talked so often about getting the fans on his side. He cultivates that sort of us against them mentality, and that stretches onto his players on the pitch and his fans in the stands as well. So I think it's a real advantage for, you know, obviously I'm sure the Reading players would like their own fans, you know, galvanising them and helping them on. But I think Warnock, without his own fans, takes away a little bit of his arsenal. So, yeah, fingers crossed it's enough for us to get the result today.
Yeah, well, Neil Warnock has been here at Matchday Stadium a grand total of 15 times, but that makes him the most defeated manager here at Matchday Stadium with a total of 10 defeats. He's beaten us 3 times in RG2 and drawn a couple of times. His teams have scored 15 times and conceded 25. If you look at their little list there, Ian Holloway's been beaten on 8 occasions. Steve Cottrell and Mick McCarthy both lost on 6 times. Allardyce and Sanchez 5 times each, and on from there really. But yeah, his 3 wins puts him at second best in terms of win records. Do you know who the only manager to have won 4 times at Matchday Stadium would be?
Ooh, good question.
I'll give you a little clue. They've played 4, won 4. That might make it a little bit easier for you.
Arsene Wenger.
Arsene Wenger, yeah, well done. But there we go. Yeah, so I mean, as you mentioned there, though, you know, Middlesbrough, the quality. Well, with British belongers on the bench. I mean, you mentioned prima donnas and so on. You got Ravel Morrison on the bench as well, who's a player who kind of lost his way. I mean, he's a sort of player that Neil Warnock could probably relishes, you know, getting under, because he can maybe rejuvenate his career. You know, it remains to be seen if that's what happens. But you look throughout the squad, and there's just solid Championship or higher, you know, top end Championship, you know, Premier League sort of players in there, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, you look at what Warnock did with Adel Taarabt at QPR, sort of made him captain, and he had an absolute wonderful season in that 2010-2011 season as they won the Championship that year. But yeah, their lineup, you know, they've got the likes of Howson in the side, they've got Friend, they've got lots of players that you've seen on Championship lineups for years in this. You know, you look up and down, Paddy McNair as well. Just Ashley Fletcher up front, as you know, Michael Morrison mentioned in his interview there. They've got quality, they've got players that can hurt you, but I don't know what's gone wrong there. I haven't seen enough of Middlesbrough to really sort of see, but it just seems, you know, we as Reading fans know that you can look at a lineup and see experience and quality, and it just doesn't click. And that's obviously what's been going on Teesside this season. So it's up to Neil Warnock to go. We definitely have that.
Well, that's the point I was going to make, Dan, because, you know, since the restart, you know, from a Reading Football Club point of view, from Mark Bowen's point of view, you know, you couldn't ask for a better kind of run-in, really. You got teams that are really fighting for something. We've got the last few where there've been teams all scrapping around at the bottom, so, you know, they've had things to play for. And then, of course, you know, we've got Blackburn and Swansea in the final 2, both of which have got that kind of outside chance of nicking into the playoffs. So there's no dead rubbers for us. And from Mark Bowen, he'll be loving that because he won't want his team to take the foot off the gas at all. I know every manager says it, but you really get the impression he means it as well. He's not on the beach yet.
Yeah, and we've said for the past few weeks, this is that opportunity for players to test themselves in a competitive environment. Sometimes as a manager, if you're two teams that are, both on the beach, it's easy for a player to look better than he is, or maybe to even look worse than he is because he hasn't got that mental edge. Whereas every game Reading are going into at the moment, yes, we're safe, but the players know they've got to be sharper, and they've got, I'm sure players in our team have got friends and things at other clubs as well, and they won't want to let them down by sort of giving in and sort of rolling over for these teams that come to Matchday Stadium or for our trip to Ewood Park either. So it is great for Mark Bowen because it lets him see how his players cope under pressure, and again, not be, I don't want to say fooled is maybe the wrong word, but you want to see what these players can do in a proper championship game rather than what is an essentially a glorified pre-season friendly.
Well, a little over 20 minutes to go until kick-off. Thank you to everyone who's joined us on YouTube and on Twitter via Periscope. Just a reminder that you're going to have to switch over to iFollow if you want to watch tonight's game. And go to readingfc.co.uk or use the app on Android or iOS. Just a reminder that all season ticket holders can watch online for free. Make sure you've redeemed your promo code if you haven't already, although if you haven't already, you've missed half a dozen games, so what were you doing? Other supporters can get a match pass for £10, and you just go to ifollow.com. Sorry, beg your pardon, readingfc.co.uk/ifollow to subscribe to a match pass, and you can email ifollow@efl.com if you need any support with your password or any technical issues you might have. Well, before we wrap up, Dan, we got to mention we're getting to that stage of the season now where it's a little bit of a trivial thing, but the Player of the Season vote's going to be coming around soon. In fact, we're going to be launching it tomorrow, so let's just take a little look. Yeah, voting opens tomorrow. There's going to be plenty of in contention, I would say, Dan. Where would your vote lie, and what are your kind of headaches you would have trying to select a player this season? Because in some years it's obvious the top goal scorers held you up, or we've had goalkeepers win it in the last few years as well. Where are your thoughts lying this year?
Yeah, I mean, look, in previous years when I've been involved with the tile list, and we've set up these Player of the Season votes and our Rookie of the Year vote as well. Oftentimes it's quite obvious, but both in terms of an overall Player of the Season and if you were to pick an official Young Player of the Season, it's quite open. There are sort of a good, especially for the main player award, there's a good sort of 4 or 5 players that you could say if they won it, well, that's fair enough. It's not the slam dunk obvious case that it has been in previous years. So, Yaku Meite's got 16 goals in all competitions, but would he be at the top of my list? Maybe not. Rafael Cabral is rated one of the championship's top goalkeepers by the Who Scored metrics. Again, would he be there? I'm not sure. Michael Morrison's had a fantastic year at centre-back as well. Andy Rinamota's making a late push again to try and hold on to his crown. And, if George Puskás bangs in 4 or 5 goals, does he suddenly sneak into your thinking in those last few games? Or even Tom McIntyre, if he has 3 great games, does he maybe get into your sort of conversational thinking? It's difficult. For me, I would probably put Rafael at the top, just because I think over the course of the entire season, it's very hard for me to think of games where he's let us down. He's maybe not had the sort of outstanding, amazing season of Nali Al-Habsi a few years ago, but I think he's been very, very consistent, and that's not something that you're able to say for a lot of Reading players this year. Maybe Michael Morrison comes into that, but John Swift had a fantastic first half of the season, and he's popped up with some magic moments. Yaku Meite's popped up with some vital goals at key times. So it's one of those things where it depends how you vote. Is it the player that you've enjoyed watching the most over the season? Is it the player that's been the most important? Or is it the player that's been the most consistent? I tend to go for the consistency vote. So that's why I would just about give it to Rafael. I think, discussing with some friends the other day, I think I had Rafael, John Swift, and Yaku Meite as my top 3. So, but it's great that I can look at so many different candidates and say, well, if they won, I wouldn't have too many complaints.
And I'm sort of smiling a little bit because you were almost describing acutely the sort of problem that you get with the Player of the Season, which is if you impress at the very end of the season, in the last few games, you kind of, that sticks in the mind when it comes to voting cards, doesn't it? So, as you mentioned there, the consistency, sometimes you forget what happened in August, September, October, or over that Christmas period, and you go, oh yeah, Yaku scored 4 the other week, didn't he? So not that he would be an illegitimate candidate by any stretch, because as you mentioned, 16 goals this year, the highest we've had from a single player since Jan Kermorgant, and certainly from out on that right flank more than not, and not really the penalty taker either. So yeah, it's I guess you've seen that issue occur on several occasions with Italis, then the kind of late flurry from one player that kind of gets him sneaking at the table.
Yeah, it's the recency bias thing, and look, we're all guilty of it, isn't it? I mean, I find it very hard to remember a lot of what happened in in February at the moment, yet alone the sort of performances in August, September, October. So I you can go look through metrics and stats, and maybe have that sort of more reasoned opinion. But again, the encouraging thing is that there are so many candidates that you can make an argument for. It's not one of those years where it's almost like, oh well, he wins it by default because everybody else has been rubbish.
All over the pitch as well, as you're mentioning, from defenders to goalkeepers, forwards.
I mean, I think Lucas João can consider himself very unlucky, because when he has played, he's been fantastic. Yeah. But can you give it to a player that's only played 20 games? Maybe not. Albeit those 20 games, he was very impressive and scored 6 important goals. It's been great, and that's why I suppose you have Player of the Month votes and you have Player of the Season votes. But yeah, for me, I think I do have to give it to Rafael for just consistency over the course of the season. I think if he were to win it, I think it might be the 4th or the 5th time in sort of 6 or 7 years we've had goalkeepers win it. Aleo Habsi won a couple, and Adam Federici I think won one as well. That's right, so it's maybe not the greatest of seasons when your goalkeeper does win it, because it means he's invariably had lots to do, but that's not a reason to not vote for him. And for me, I think he just shades it, because it's been such a relief. We had a lot of uncertainty in the goalkeeper position after Ali left the club. We had Vito Minone come in, Sam Walker came in, João Virginia. We had Emi Martinez, but he was only ever here for half a season. And, now he's playing week in, week out for Arsenal. So it's been great to sort of have that reliable presence between the sticks. And, when you're building your side, any successful Reading team has had that keeper, whether it's a Steve Francis, a Shaka Hislop, Marcus Hanneman, or Adam Federici, Alex McCarthy. We've had those great goalkeepers in the past, and it's nice to see Rafael sort of. He's not. You can look all over the pitch and think, okay, well, do we need an upgrade? Who are there? Goalkeeper is one of very few positions where you would say we are completely set here. We don't need to go out and sign someone. So yeah, for me, he just about edges it. But there are lots of worthy candidates, and three games can make a massive difference in that.
And Rafael, I mean, just to jump on the sort of bandwagon, if you like, he's what a great guy as well. He came here not speaking pretty much not a word of the Queen's, and his English is just, he made such an effort. He lives locally. He's really just taken to it. I think he just loves life, basically. He's just a really positive guy, and that's the sort of character that which you don't necessarily know what to expect when a player comes from Brazil. He lived in Italy. You're not necessarily sure what to expect, but what a great character is.
Yeah, and he would have been under pressure as well, because he came in at a time where we had João Virginia in goal. So we had this highly rated prospect from Everton. Yes, he had not the greatest of spells here, some high profile errors, but lots of people were saying, well, why have we gone to sign another goalkeeper? Is this guy really going to improve us? It's should we be looking down into the academy or something like that? But no, he's come in and he's immediately sort of put any of those questions to bed, and he's only got better as the season's gone on. So he's been a big part of the fact we've kept 3 clean sheets in a row as well, as much as we talked up the likes of Osho and Tom McIntyre as well. You can't knock what Rafael has done. So credit to him. As I said, he wins it for me, but 3 big games. Again, if John Swift goes and pops up with 2 or 3 goals in these next 3 games, maybe that sort of brings him back to the front as well. So lots to play for, and it'll be an interesting vote anyway.
Well, you could probably hear the Royals anthem blaring out behind, which means that it's less than quarter of an hour until kick-off. Dan, last thing to do is, of course, is ask for score predictions for today. Yes,
I've gone for a 1-0 home victory. I think we'll keep that defensive momentum going. I think we'll just nick it, hopefully. I'd like to see Puskás grab another goal, just because I do want to see him sort of keep that momentum going. He's bagged in sort of 2 of the last 3, and if he can just sort of finish the season on a real hot streak, hopefully he'll bring that into next season as well.
And hopefully the kind of, as you say, we mentioned right at the top, really, the fact that we are mathematically safe and things. I know it was always a long shot that we would have gone down, but it might just allow that slight bit more freedom that we've not always seen here in Radeski.
Yeah, look, we mentioned we've won 1 home game in 2020 in the league, and that's It's not sustainable if you do want to be a top 6 side. And Mark Bowen came here talking about having playoff ambitions, and look, we've unfortunately fallen short. We'll fall somewhere between probably 6 and 9 points short in the end. And it's how do we make up those points next season? And it will be a case of being more clinical, it'll be a case of cutting out errors, and it'll be a case of being more creative in the midfield at times. So everyone's got a role to play, everyone's got a chance to impress, and people are literally playing for their futures over these next 3 games, be it at Reading and elsewhere. So if you do see someone switching off, then that could affect where they end up next season. So lots to play for, and hopefully we can get the job done today.
Well, it's 12 minutes to go until kick-off. Thanks to everyone who's joined us on YouTube and on Periscope via Twitter to enjoy this build-up. And obviously you can switch over to iFollow now to watch the remainder and the kick-off as it happens. And of course, thank you very much, Dan, for joining us once more.
Rich, absolute pleasure. And I said, hopefully we can get those 3 points.
Well, that's all there is to it. Let's get those 3 points, and come on, you Ars.
Go on, you Ars.